That's usually your spot. What should we do? I'll tell you what, maybe one of the deputy governors can kneel and you can sit on. No, that's not. Yeah, thank you. I'll have to remember that. Yes, thank you. Better stories if I get you a couch. All right. I want to take a moment this afternoon before we begin to recognize the incredible bravery and dedication of our first responders. Already in the 51 days that I've served as governor, we've laid a state trooper to rest. We've seen 5 police officers injured after running into a workplace shooting that took 5 lives. We've mourned a Godfrey District firefighter who died in the line of duty, and another law enforcement officer was shot today while executing a warrant. My office will continue to monitor that situation. All of Illinois grieves for the fallen, and our prayers are with the families of those who have been injured in the line of duty and the families of those that we've lost. We owe all of them a debt of gratitude. So thank you all for joining us today. My administration has begun negotiations over the fair income tax so that we can finally put Illinois on course toward firm fiscal footing. As I said throughout the campaign, Illinois' flat tax system is unfair to the middle class and to those who are striving to get to the middle class. People like me should pay more, and people like you should pay less. That's what a fair tax is all about, and that's what this will be. Before I get into the details, it's important to talk about how Illinois got here and what our choices really are. I was sworn in just 51 days ago, and the first thing that I did was begin by diving into the details of the state's precarious fiscal condition. It was worse than we thought. Over the ensuing weeks, our work showed that the damage done in previous years was beyond the assumed $2 billion deficit, and even beyond the $2.7 billion in the comptroller's excellent report. As our study showed, Illinois actually faces a $3.2 billion budget deficit next year. And that prior 4 years has left the state with nearly $10 billion of additional late payment debt, on top of the $5 billion backlog at the beginning of the last term. The state's been operating with a multi-billion-dollar structural deficit that has a tremendously destabilizing effect on our state's economy, on our businesses, our jobs, and the future of working families. I don't know anyone in Illinois that thinks that we can any longer just whistle past the graveyard and ignore the fiscal challenges that we face. And no one thinks that the right answer is to replay the last 4 years of gridlock and dysfunction. So my administration has been diligently working on a comprehensive approach to solving the problem and getting our state on track toward economic growth and balanced budgets. Instituting a fair tax, as I've proposed, will improve the arc of our state's finances forever and will make our system more fair for everyone. It's wrong that I would pay the same tax rate as someone earning $100,000, or even worse, pay the same tax rate as someone earning $30,000, which is why 33 states and the federal government use lower rates for lower earnings and higher rates for higher earnings. As I outlined when I addressed the General Assembly not too long ago, those who oppose this choice have very few options to stabilize our finances. They might choose to cut education, public safety, environmental protection, and other government services by 15%. That means larger class sizes, higher costs of kids going to college, more hollowing out of our critical human services, and fewer state police for our public safety. Most damningly, This would lead to a very predictable increase in local property taxes. This type of thing was tried, and it failed resoundingly. And this approach certainly won't create good-paying jobs and build the Illinois we deserve or that we want for all of our children. Another choice they could make is to raise taxes by 20% on every person in the state of Illinois. To generate enough revenue, they would need to raise the state income tax on the working poor and the middle class from 4.95% to at least 5.95%. For a mom making $61,000, that would mean a tax increase of $521 per year, all while the wealthy aren't paying their fair share. There is a better and more fair way, and it protects working families. My proposal accomplishes several goals that I outlined from day one. First, the fair tax would eliminate the budget deficit, balance future budgets, and reduce the pension liability by producing revenue of $3.4 billion. Second, under this plan, everyone who earns up to $250,000 will pay the same or less than what they're paying today. That's 97% of Illinoisans. In some cases, this reduction will be very modest, and in some cases, especially for families with children, it will amount to hundreds of dollars. That's real money that working families can use for an emergency car repair, groceries to feed their kids, or childcare expenses. Third, working families are buried under a property tax system that asks them to carry too much of the load. My proposal provides much-needed property tax relief with a $100 million increase in the property tax credit. A single homeowner who makes less than $250,000 will see an increase in the property tax write-off of 20%. A couple who makes more than up to $500,000 will also see a property tax write-off of 20%. To be clear, approaching property tax relief in this way benefits homeowners, but it doesn't jeopardize schools or local communities. Fourth, included in this proposal is a new tax credit of $100 per child for families raising children, especially those families who most need it. Single parents earning less than $40,000 a year will get the full credit, and single parents who earn more than $40,000 will get the credit on a sliding scale up to $80,000. For two-income families, they get $100 per child up to $60,000 a year on a sliding scale up to $100,000. Fifth, this proposal keeps Illinois competitive with its neighbors. Most families in Iowa and Wisconsin pay more in income taxes under their current tax systems than they would if they lived in Illinois under our proposed tax plan. Now, there are those who want to scare people by claiming that this proposal will cause residents and businesses to flee Illinois. They couldn't be more wrong. They ignore the fact that people and businesses are fleeing our state now under our current regressive tax system. Yet states with fair tax systems on average grow faster and create more jobs than Illinois. It's time that we stabilized our state's finances so we can give businesses and new entrepreneurs the certainty that Illinois has its fiscal house in order. This fair tax proposal is fiscally responsible and makes Illinois a more predictable place for existing businesses to operate and for new businesses to start and grow. In the weeks ahead, we're looking forward to discussing and debating this proposal with members of the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle. I respect the right of opponents to disagree with this proposal, but they should do so in good faith with a specific counterproposal, not pie in the sky. We should all demand that they tell you specifically what they support that will address the $3.2 billion budget deficit, pay down $15 billion of debt from unpaid bills, and protect working families. The principal options for fixing state finances are: 1, make a drastic 15% cut to schools, public safety, transportation, and universities. 2, raise income taxes by 20% on the middle class and everyone else in Illinois. Or 3, implement a fair income tax that only raises taxes on 3% of people in Illinois. I choose fairness. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Earned $55 million worth of taxable income in 2017. Under this plan, you'd pay $4.4 million in taxes. So doesn't this incentivize people such as yourself, people that have the means to hide their money offshore? To take that income and, find other ways to hide it, to make sure that they're not having to pay that 7.95%?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, this tax plan does ask people who are wealthier to pay more, but not unreasonably so. And it does give a tax break to 97% of people across the state of Illinois. It's a fair plan, and businesses are not hurt by it. It is something that helps us to stabilize our state government finances. Remember that businesses and wealthy people want to live in Illinois if we have a stable government, if they know what the future looks like. But today, people really don't, because for years now, we've run a structural deficit that's been kind of plotted together every year, looking like a balanced budget, but really isn't. They've been selling the Thompson Center for years on end as part of the budget. That's not right. And I think if people see that Illinois has its fiscal house in order, people will want to be here, they'll want to create jobs here, they'll want to invest here.
Governor, the middle class and people striving to get their significant tax relief, this is the relief, $5 a week?
Hundreds of dollars for many families across the state of Illinois is real relief. And remember, we're also accomplishing something incredibly important for the state, which is by stabilizing our state and the state's finances, we're giving people an opportunity to start businesses, to grow businesses, and for companies all over the world to choose to come to Illinois because they'll have certainty. That's one of the most important things for job creation.
The Constitution will not say incremental revenue from this structure will go towards stabilizing the state. What guarantee can you give taxpayers that $3 billion in new revenue will be used in the ways that to pay down bills, to pay pensions?
Well, there's never been a guarantee by anyone over the course of the entire history of our nation, really, that money that gets raised gets spent in the way that everybody would want necessarily. But I'm telling you that I'm committed to stabilizing this budget, to making sure that we get rid of the deficits that exist for the state of Illinois and creating this, frankly, very strong foundation for people to build on in our state.
Why now? Is this because of your meeting on Monday, or are you trying to counter the narrative that the Illinois Policy Institute is putting out there with all of their messaging campaigns? Why now? Why today?
No, we're, as you know, we have said all along that I would be introducing the idea of and a plan for and negotiations of the fair tax system. We need to make sure that we're beginning those negotiations. That's what this is, a beginning of those negotiations.
But Governor, from those bond markets who said that Illinois could slide to junk status after your budget proposal. Is this to help give them some security? What message does this send to Wall Street?
There's not a timing relationship between the two, but what is important is, I think, for bond investors to see that Illinois is finally dealing with its challenges and that we are finally balancing the budget of the state.
Governor Warren Buffett has said that he would not invest businesses in states that have high amounts of pension debt. Illinois is one of those states that has huge amounts of pension debt. It's not just the state, it's also local level. Property taxes playing into this. Should there not be a constitutional amendment for changing the pension protection clause? Also put up with the constitutional amendment question here to let voters kind of, sound off on these issues.
Well, let's start with there's real certainty once we get it passed that constitutional amendment for a graduated income tax, for a fair tax system, will in fact produce the results that we want. There's no certainty that if you passed a constitutional amendment related to the pensions and reducing the payments to people who are owed pensions would in fact survive any court challenge. The truth is that there is a clause in the Constitution, the Contracts Clause, which would make it likely that we would spend years in litigation from the state of Illinois dealing with this and not knowing what the outcome would be. Instead, what I'd like to do is make sure that we're actually paying the pensions that are owed to people, that we're standing up for the obligations that we have. We've bent the cost curve with the Tier 2 system. But it's time for us to stop playing games and to actually do what we need to do, balance the budget.
So under this tax structure, how much income tax would you have paid in 2015?
I don't know what I'll be paying this coming year. I don't know. I've looked back, but here's what I will say. It is clear under this system that I would pay 3% more than the flat tax that exists today at 4.95 because there's a 7.95 top rate for people who are high earners, and so I would pay 3% more.
Governor, what would you say to businesses who would be impacted by it? You said small businesses aren't going to be impacted by it, but if they're looking at a 3 percentage point increase, I don't know what that translates to an actual percentage increase, but that's significant. If they're making, small business decisions, hiring decisions, how is that not going to harm them?
So the first thing I'd say is that a lot of that we have a corporate rate in the state of Illinois, and the corporate rate that's set under this proposal is simply 0.95% higher than the corporate rate that already exists. So it's really less than 1% increase. Second point that I'd make is that we're actually creating, when we create stability in the state, we're creating a much more foundational opportunity for people to start and grow their businesses when they know what the future looks like, because we will have balanced the budget, because we will be dealing with our pension liability, because we're addressing the major problems that face the state, including paying down the $15 billion of unpaid bills, some of which has been refinanced, some of which we're still paying 12% on. All of those things create an environment in which people are more likely to want to do business.
Is there any chance that you can get a Republican vote on this, or has that ship sailed?
Certainly there are a lot of Republicans that have already announced, I think every Republican in the House, as far as I know, has already announced that they're opposed to it before they even saw it. I think that the revelation of what this plan might look like will give them an opportunity to reconsider.
If you're insisting that a flat tax is a bad, deal for people, then why a flat tax on businesses? Why not also adopt a graduated structure? It doesn't have to be the same as for individuals, but why not even?
Well, it is graduated for those who have LLCs or S-corps that have the income flowing through their personal returns. And of course, there is a corporate tax rate at 7.95, as you know. Look, this will be open for negotiation and discussion, certainly, but I think this is the best result. They were paying a flat tax at 7% before. They'd be paying a flat tax again.
What relief can you promise that, for individuals, you have this property tax credit, and there's another tax credit mentioned in there?
Child tax credit.
Yes. And, but some farmers file as S-corps, and they're already paying a higher amount. So, what relief can you promise them if as negotiations go further?
Sure. Well, first of all, anybody that's making $250,000 or less is going to get a tax break. And that flat rate that you're talking about doesn't apply unless somebody's making $1 million or more. We certainly have other things that we do, as you know, in the agriculture economy to help farmers. I'm working with them, in fact, to expand the opportunity for them to move into new crop, like hemp, to make sure that we're preserving their property tax level that they've got today, which is a pretty effective one for them. And so I'm going to continue to work with businesses to make sure that they've got the greatest opportunity that they can.
Speaker Pelosi called the Trump tax cuts crumbs. What would she call this? And how do you get the people of Illinois excited about $5 a week?
I think you're overlooking the most important thing that we're accomplishing here. There are tax cuts for people, and most of it comes to the middle class and people striving to get there. But here's the thing. The most important thing that we're accomplishing is stabilizing the finances of the state. We cannot go longer in the state with a budget situation that doesn't actually pay the bills, that doesn't pay down the backlog, that doesn't approach paying off the pension liability, as it is today. We have to address these things. That's the most important thing. The question is, and this is the question you should ask opponents, the question is, are you going to do it in a way that's fair to working families? Or are you going to do it in a way that's reduces the tax burden on working families and asks those who are most able to step up to the plate and pay? That's what this system does.
The tax foundation
Thank you.
The tax foundation
Thank
says
you.
that progressive tax would lower